First step to setting up your aquarium is to place your tank and your chiller in the location where you want to keep them for the duration of the program. Your next step will be to add the gravel to your aquarium. All of the tanks and the gravel were cleaned with bleach and water at the end of last year's program. You might still find bits of dirt or things that have fallen in over the last few months of storage. Feel free to pluck those out, but everything should be clean enough as is. Make sure that you spread the gravel along the entire bottom of the aquarium. Next, reach into your second bucket and grab your large rocks. If you would like, you can also collect your own rocks, but they must be boiled thoroughly before they are added to the aquarium. Remember that no living things other than the trout may be added to your aquarium. Grab your filter and hang it over the back side of the aquarium. You can open the top of the filter to check and make sure there's a filter cartridge inside. The cartridge should be clean on one side and it might look dirty on the other from the carbon inside. If you have a cartridge that is dirty on both sides, it might be worth removing that one and putting your spare inside of the filter. If you look inside of the provided plastic tub, you should have a backup filter. Reach back into your tub and grab your aerator. The aerator should have a pump, a tube, and an air stone. Before you put it in the tank, you can plug it in and make sure that the pump vibrates or makes a buzzing sound before you put it in the tank. Once the air stone is installed in the tank, it can be a hassle to try to move it later on, so I like to make sure that it's functioning before the water goes in. I usually push some of the gravel up so that it can help hold the air stone in place. You'll notice it has a gap in between the top and the bottom part. I usually fill that with the gravel. Next up, we connect the chiller. The chiller will have two hoses. One hose is the outflow and one is the inflow. You may have to take off a little rubber cap before you can attach the tubes. These hoses can be pretty stiff. You may notice that they take a bit of muscle to get them to move where you want them to. If you look at your chiller, you'll see that one connector says in and one connector says out. The hose that I'm holding right now is the outflow. It takes cold water from the chiller and deposits it into the tank. The outflow will sit pretty high up on the rim of the tank so that as the water flows out, it creates disruption on the surface of the water and brings some dissolved oxygen down to the fish. The filter can also perform this function, and that is also the air stone's primary function, but it's great to have those three components all contributing oxygen to the system. Make sure that you screw the hoses on really tight. It can leak a bit at the beginning, but the leaking should be temporary and not very much, but make sure you twist them on really tight. The next hose is the inflow. It takes water from the aquarium and pumps it into the chiller. You can see this large pump on the end. That pump has slats and sort of a filter to keep the fish from getting sucked fully into it, but they can definitely still get stuck on the side of it, and because they're so small, they're unable to swim away, so they can get stuck on it. I'll show you in a little bit how I get around this issue, but again, make sure that you screw on this tube really, really tight. Some of the chillers that I will be delivering will already be wrapped in this cheesecloth. But if it's not, you should have one either in your box or in your empty aquarium. And if not, please reach out to me and I can make sure that you get a piece of this cheesecloth. What I've done is I've stuck the pump right in the cheesecloth. Just have to adjust my camera. And then I wrapped it up and around it to protect the fish from getting sucked up along the side of it. I did initially try to wrap it around the cord as well, which you'll see. I did struggle with trying to fit the zip tie all the way around it, so I left the cord out of it more. I'm hoping that's not something that I'll regret later. I'm not sure if the fish will be able to get trapped inside of this, but I'm going to give it a go and see what happens. And if I need to fix it later, then I can pull it out and fix it and make it tighter around it. I'm hoping though that the fish won't get caught in those little holes. You will probably notice that this chiller pump has suction cups on the bottom of it. That is so that you can suction it to the side of your aquarium if you're very lucky. I have never had luck with it sticking to the side, so I've kind of given up on that. Sometimes I stick it to the bottom, but with the cheesecloth being on it especially, sticking it down isn't really an option. It is finally time to add the water. For your aquarium, you can use tap water, but once the eggs or the fish are in the tank, this water will have to sit out at least overnight to allow it to dechlorinate. Tap water is normally treated with chlorine, and that can be very harmful to the fish if they are exposed to it. Again, leaving the water out overnight makes it completely safe for the fish. I recommend always keeping a bucket of water on hand in case you need to change out the water quickly. Keep adding water until there is about an inch of space between the top of the water and the black frame on top of the aquarium. You'll notice on your filter, if you look very closely, it has a minimum water level line on it. Make sure that your water level never falls below that line, or else the filter will stop working. You don't want the water to be so high though that the filter is not able to create that little waterfall on top. You definitely still want to have that. What I'm doing right now is trying to redistribute the gravel that got disturbed when I poured the water in. You can use that stiff tubing that you saw me use, or if you have clean hands that don't have lotion or hand sanitizer or anything like that, which is probably unlikely, you can reach your hand down in there, but the aquarium is pretty deep and the water will be well above your elbow if you decide to do it that way. Sometimes it's the only way to get the job done though. As you start plugging everything in, look for signs that everything is functioning properly. The filter should be creating a little waterfall just on top of the water. The aerator should be creating lots of little bubbles and dissolved oxygen for the fish, and the chiller should have turned on. To set the temperature, hold the orange button that says set for 5 seconds. After 5 seconds, the numbers will begin to flash. At that point, you can turn the temperature up or down. What's amazing about trout is that you can change the rate of their development by changing the temperature of the water. If you want your fish to develop more slowly, set the temperature cooler. However, keep within the range of 45 to 55 degrees. If your chiller did not turn on its own, it's most likely because you have to hit that little green button on the side. The last component that we have to add onto the tank is the thermometer. Although your chiller should always tell you what the current temperature of the tank is, it's always good to have a backup. And it's a good way for students to learn how to use a thermometer. That should be everything that you need to know to get your aquarium up and running. Please reach out if you have any questions.